The Bride Beneath the Veil. You never told him, did you, Robert? Her voice was calm, almost kind, but there was something behind it, something cold. Robert's hand trembled as he looked at her across the dimly lit church hall. The guests were laughing in the distance, glasses clinking, music soft, but to him, the world had gone silent. Isabella stood there in her wedding dress, the veil still covering half her face, her eyes locked on his. "He doesn't know what you did," she whispered, "but I do." And in that moment, Robert Hale felt time stop. Now let's go back, to where it all began. Robert lived alone in a quiet town called Millersburg, a town that slept early and forgot easily. His wife, Margaret, had died 20 years ago, leaving him with only his son, Ethan, and an old house filled with memories he tried not to remember. Robert was a good man, or so everyone thought, the kind who helped neighbors fix fences and spent his evenings sipping black coffee on the porch. Ethan was his pride, a young lawyer, kind, full of life. Every visit from him brought laughter back into the house. And then, one day, Ethan came home with a girl. She was beautiful in a quiet way, dark hair, warm skin, soft eyes that seemed to carry a whole world of sadness and mystery. Her name was Isabella Morales. "Dad," Ethan said almost shyly, "this is Isabella. We've been together for a while, and we want to get married." Robert smiled, a genuine smile, the kind that had grown rare. "Well," he said, shaking her hand, "if you make my son happy, then you're already family." And that was how it began. For weeks the house came alive again. Isabella cooked, laughed, helped around, and filled the empty rooms with warmth. Robert found himself liking her, until the little things began to feel off. She knew things she shouldn't. Once she asked about the old lake house Robert had sold years ago, a place he never mentioned. Another time she brought up Margaret, his late wife, in such detail it almost felt like she'd known her. Robert brushed it off at first. Maybe Ethan had told her. Maybe it was just coincidence. But doubt has a way of whispering louder each day. He began to notice more. Isabella's late-night walks outside, her long phone calls in Spanish that ended the second he walked in, her habit of asking about his past with a polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. One night, unable to sleep, Robert went downstairs for a glass of water and saw her standing in the living room, staring at an old family photo of him and Margaret. Her hand was trembling slightly. "Can't sleep either?" he said quietly. She jumped, then smiled faintly. "You and Margaret looked happy," she said. "We were," he replied. "That was a long time ago." "Not long enough," she murmured under her breath, too softly for him to be sure he heard it right. The next morning, Robert began to dig. He didn't tell Ethan. He told himself it was just to protect his son, to be sure. He called an old friend, Tom, who worked in public records. "Look up a girl named Isabella Morales," he said. A day later, Tom called back. "Nothing bad," he said. "Clean background, born in New Mexico, lived there all her life. Why?" Robert didn't answer. Something still didn't sit right. Over the next few days, he started watching her quietly, noting every small thing. She once walked out behind the shed, where his wife's old garden used to be, and stood there for several minutes, as if listening. Another time, he found her sitting in the kitchen reading his old journal, the one from the years right after Margaret died. When he confronted her, she smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, Robert. I didn't mean to pry. I was just curious about your life. I want to understand this family I'm about to join." Her words were gentle, too gentle, but she never seemed afraid, never defensive. She always met his eyes, steady, calm. And after a while, even Robert began to doubt his own doubts. Maybe he was just being paranoid, a lonely old man afraid of change. Ethan loved her, and she seemed to love him. Maybe that was all that mattered. So one evening, sitting by the fire, Robert finally told Ethan, "She's a good girl, son. You've made the right choice." Ethan smiled. "Thanks, Dad. That means everything." And for the first time in months, Robert slept peacefully. The wedding came a few weeks later, a small ceremony in the town's old church. The day was bright, the sky clear, and the whole town came to celebrate. Isabella looked stunning in white lace, her face half hidden behind a delicate veil. Robert stood near the front row, pride and relief washing over him. For once, it felt like life had forgiven him for the past. After the ceremony, while guests gathered for dinner, Isabella approached him quietly. Her voice was soft. "Robert, can we talk? Just for a moment." He nodded and followed her into the old vestry room behind the church. The room was empty, lit only by the afternoon sun spilling through stained glass. Dust floated in the air. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for trusting me, for accepting me." He smiled. "You make my son happy." "That's all I ever wanted." She stepped closer. "You're a good man, Robert. Or at least, you try to be." Something in her tone made him pause. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly, her veil shimmering in the light. "You never told Ethan about your daughter, did you?" Robert's heart stopped. His mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" Her smile widened, calm, almost sorrowful. "Margaret's first child, the one before Ethan, the one you both pretended never existed." Robert took a step back, his breathing uneven. "That's not possible. How do you—" Isabella slowly lifted the veil. Her eyes met his, eyes so familiar that for a second he couldn't breathe. "I know," she whispered, "because that child was me." The room felt suddenly smaller, colder. "I grew up in New Mexico," she continued softly. "My mother told me about you before she died, about the man who left her and started a new life, pretending she never existed. She made me promise that one day I would look into your eyes and let you see what you'd forgotten." Robert's mind spun. He wanted to speak, to deny, but her face, her eyes, they were Margaret's, the same color, the same sadness. "Isabella, what are you saying?" he managed to whisper. "I'm saying," she said calmly, "that I never came here for Ethan. I came for you." Tears stung his eyes. "You can't do this. You can't destroy him like this." Her voice stayed steady. "Don't worry, Robert. I won't destroy him. I love him in my own way. But you'll remember. Every time you see me, every time he calls me his wife, you'll remember what you did." She stepped back, fixing the veil again. Her voice softened into a whisper. "You never told him, did you, Robert?" Robert stood frozen, his breath shaking. Outside, the music and laughter carried on. Ethan calling her name, guests cheering. Isabella turned toward the door. "It's time for our first dance," she said, almost cheerfully. "Come, Father." And as she walked away, Robert's vision blurred. His heart pounded with guilt, fear, disbelief. The truth echoed through his mind like thunder. The daughter he had lost, the secret he had buried, now wearing white, walking hand in hand with his son. The church bells rang, and the sound twisted in his ears. Somewhere beyond the laughter, he could swear he heard Margaret's voice, soft and distant. "We all have to pay, Robert, sooner or later." Robert staggered out into the light, but all he saw was Isabella, the bride beneath the veil, smiling faintly as she took Ethan's hand. And as the music swelled, Robert finally understood the real meaning of her first words. "He doesn't know what you did, but I do." The bells kept ringing, the veil fluttered, and Robert Hale realized the past had just come home.